Winning Blueprint presents.
In the L.A.B room. Minnesota Vikings.
There's not many stadiums in the National Football League that you can close your eyes and hear a sound and associate that sound with that stadium. There's not many of them. But Mall of America Field is one of them. There's only a handful, and Mall of America Field is one of them. And that sound, that horn was going off quite a bit this year due to the man we call AD, aka AP, aka All Day, aka Adrian Peterson. Man, that guy is an absolute monster. He's a beast. Animal. Whatever you want to call him. Whatever adjective you want to use to describe Adrian Peterson, he's that. As long as you're not calling him soft, as long as you're not calling him slow, as long as you're not calling him unathletic, you're talking about Adrian Peterson. He single-handedly put this Minnesota Vikings team on his back and carried them to the postseason. This was a 2012 season full with ups and downs, obstacles, trials and tribulations. But when it was all said and done, the Vikings found a way to get over the stumbling blocks that were placed in front of them and get to the postseason as one of the 12 participants to make it to the postseason. With that being said, hi, I'm Lou. Thank you for joining me. This is the L.A.B follow-up for the Minnesota Vikings. They are selecting 23rd in the 2013 NFL Draft. So we'll be talking Minnesota Vikings football here on the L.A.B follow-up today. So let's talk about the season. Recap that and then get into what the Vikings need to do in the offseason moving forward to take the next step. They made it to the postseason. That's step number one. What do they need to do now to become a serious contender? Not only to make it to the postseason year in, year out, but to win their division and possibly compete for a Super Bowl championship. So the 2012 season for the Minnesota Vikings, up, down, up, down. They started out like gangbusters, however. Coming out of the gates 4-1. And with that start, they opened a lot of eyes. I mean, one of those wins was a dominant performance against the San Francisco 49ers, who we all know now were the Super Bowl participants for the NFC. So the Vikings can play with the best of them. That's what that game showed. The Vikings aren't afraid to take anyone on and take them down. When they play their best, they can beat anyone. So they ultimately ended up starting the season 5-2. Red hot. Red hot. But I wasn't a believer. But I wasn't sold. Like many of you out there, I wasn't sold. And I can't speak for anyone else, but I can tell you, I did not think the Minnesota Vikings really were a playoff team. Especially after their start at 5-2. I still had my doubts and reservations about this team. Mainly because I didn't think Christian Ponder was good enough to get you to the postseason. And so I was really hard on this Minnesota Vikings team all season long. And I never gave them the credit that they really deserved. Because I felt like they were overachieving. They were beating up on some bad teams. They beat Jacksonville. And they were playing the Detroit Lions, who we later found out was a really bad team. They beat up on Arizona. And so I was really kind of hesitant to give Minnesota any kind of credit. I never really believed in the Vikings. I went on a rant and talked about how the NFC North was a band of brothers. It was a group. The whole division was like brothers. And the Detroit Lions were the kid brother. They couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't leave the house. They were grounded. And then the Vikings were a notch above the Detroit Lions. They were that middle-aged teenager brother that always wanted to tag along with the older brothers, always wanted to hang out and stay out late, but they had a curfew, and they had to go home. And I said that the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers were the older brothers. They didn't have a curfew. They could stay out as late as they wanted to. But the Minnesota Vikings had to come home. When the street lights came on, it got dark outside, it was time for them to go home. That's what I kept saying all year long. And I thought that the Vikings were going to wake up out of this dream that they were having starting 5-2 and realize, man, it's getting dark outside. Yeah, I think I should be heading on home now. And I was waiting for the other shoe to drop the whole entire season. And after that 5-2 start, it dropped. They lost 4 out of 5. They found themselves at a crossroads in their season at 6-6. And I really started getting mouthy at that point because I said, yeah, here we go. The Vikings are proving me right. Just like I said, the Vikings aren't ready for primetime. They're the teenage brother that has a curfew. It's time for them to go home. And I thought that the Vikings were going to fall back to the backdrop of that division and allow the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers to separate. But the Vikings said, hey, why don't you get off our back? We'll show you a thing or two. And I said the Vikings are in the fast lane. When they started 5-2, I said the Vikings are in the fast lane right now. They're a Corvette. They feel like they're a Corvette, but they're really not. They're in the left-hand lane. They're all the way to the left. And they're driving 90. They're flooring it. But we all know the truth. The Minnesota Vikings are a soccer mom. They're in a minivan, and they should be in the right-hand lane doing 55. And they took offense to that statement. And after falling to 6-6 on the season and having that crossroads, they beat the Chicago Bears, the Green Bay Packers, and the Houston Texans to finish up the season on a 4-game winning streak, got to 10-6, and got a playoff berth. An amazing run by the Minnesota Vikings to finish up this season. That game on the road against Houston, that was the one right there that did it for me. That was the one that won me over. I was never a Minnesota Vikings bandwagoner, but that was the one that showed me they were for real. They were serious about going to the postseason. They were going to make a run at making it to the postseason. That was the one that opened my eyes. Because for the whole season, my eyes had been shut on the Minnesota Vikings. But that one opened my eyes wide because they went on the road in a hostile environment and beat a quality football team in the Houston Texans. Something that I didn't think they could do. And so I had to open my eyes and really admit that I was wrong about this Minnesota Vikings team. They're better than I thought they were. And the reason I wouldn't give them the credit that I think that they really deserved is because of Christian Ponder. I didn't trust him. I didn't trust Christian Ponder. And I was really hard on him this season. And I must say I owe the Vikings an apology and I owe Christian Ponder an apology. And I really, truly am sorry and I apologize from the bottom of my heart to both of you, the whole team and Christian Ponder, because I was hard on both of you. More so Christian Ponder than the Minnesota Vikings team as a whole. Because I didn't think Christian Ponder was good enough to lead this team to the postseason. I didn't think he was good enough to be the starting quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. And I thought that the Vikings potentially reached on him. And I think that's why I'm so critical of him, even hypercritical at times of Christian Ponder, because I thought that the Vikings went and drafted him too soon. But I contradicted myself because in my mind, there's no such thing as reaching for a player in the draft. If you feel like someone is an asset that can help your team, and you feel like, I got to have this guy, and he can help you take that next step, then forget about what all the critics and all the experts say. Forget about what all the consensus around the league is on this guy. So what that everyone thinks he's a 3rd-round grade? If you think he's a 1st-round grade, what are you waiting for? Pull the trigger on him. You don't know what other teams are thinking. They could be thinking the same thing you're thinking. They could be thinking, hey, this guy's a 1st-round talent. So you can't wait. You have to pull the trigger, and that's what they did with Christian Ponder. And at the time, it seemed like it was a little early. I thought everyone in that draft, that was the Blaine Gabbert, Jake Locker, Christian Ponder draft, if you don't remember, I thought everyone had a knee-jerk reaction and went up and snagged quarterbacks a lot sooner than they had to. And I think that's why I'm so hard on Christian Ponder, but forget about all that. He got it done. And there were times this season when he threw for 63 yards, he'd be 7 of 19 with 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, and only threw for 63 yards. And I'd be frustrated because those are the type of performances that lead me to believe that he's not the answer at the quarterback position for the Vikings. But then he has games like he does against the San Francisco 49ers where he's just flawless. He's stellar. He's running with the football, which I think he doesn't do enough of. He's throwing the ball with beautiful touch and really leading his team to victory. And it's games like that that make you second guess yourself if you think he can't get it done and you say, hey, when he's on, he's on. But when he's off, man, is he off. But he did enough to have this team make it to the postseason. And so I have to really get off of his back. His numbers were not bad in the 2012 season. And it's funny because you never know what you got until it's gone. That's one of the oldest sayings in the book. You never know what you got until it's gone. But I realized that with Christian Ponder, I am not a Minnesota Vikings fan. Nor do I pretend to be. But man, did I feel so bad when Christian Ponder could not play against the Green Bay Packers in Wild Card Weekend because they really could have used Christian Ponder in that game. And his absence in that game, man, was it apparent. They had to turn to Joe Webb, did the Minnesota Vikings, and you never stood a chance. Joe Webb couldn't even throw a 7-yard pass in this game. He was abysmal. The first drive looked good. It was about 11 straight runs. It only amounted to a field goal. You never got close again to the end zone. And that was as close as you ever came to really scoring points in this game. And the Packers took it to you, and you lost the football game. And it could have been a different story. It probably would have been a different story if Christian Ponder would have played. Not saying that you would have won, but you would have been a lot more competitive. And so, for all I said about Christian Ponder all season long, the Vikings needed him in the postseason. And I ragged on him, and I talked bad about him, and I really threw dirt and all kinds of things his way. I was really slinging mud at him all season long. But him not playing in the postseason showed me his worth to this franchise. And so I really need to back off of Christian Ponder. And looking at his numbers, he wasn't that bad in 2012. He really wasn't. I just was hypercritical of him because there were games this year where he looked like the worst quarterback, starting quarterback in the National Football League. There were games where this guy didn't have over 70 yards passing, 2 interceptions, a completion percentage well under 50. We're talking in the 40s. He just looked abysmal, lost at times. But I need to get off of Christian Ponder's back is what I need to do. Give the man a chance. I'm really starting to open up to the idea that maybe Christian Ponder can be the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings if he gets more weapons around him. So I guess the question that I had for the Minnesota Vikings in the offseason, and the first one that I really wanted an answer to, would be, is Christian Ponder the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings for the future? But I don't think that's an issue for the Vikings. I don't think that franchise itself thinks that there's even a question to be answered here. I think they feel like Christian Ponder is their starting quarterback now and into the future. And so I guess because I watch so much football and I watch these quarterbacks and I see them slinging the ball all around the field, I just feel like Christian Ponder isn't even close to being a top 12 quarterback in the league. He's not even close to being a top 15 quarterback. I think he has such a long way to go that it's hard for me to envision him getting that much better to close that gap because it's so enormous right now. But he's still a young man, and I keep having to remind myself that. He's only in his second season. So what I'm expecting from him may be a tad bit too early for me to be expecting him to go out and perform at such a high level. I guess the rookies that just passed in the 2012 season have spoiled me, and I'm assuming that guys just need to come in the league and just get it done. And that's not the way it works. And so I think Christian Ponder needs more weapons. I think he'll be fine. I just need to give him a chance to prove what he can do. He needs to be more consistent, that's for sure. Whether you have weapons or not, you can't be as bad as he's been in some of these games. But at the end of the day, Christian Ponder is the quarterback for the Vikings now and moving forward. And I think I and others who have questions and doubts about that need to just accept it and allow the guy to breathe and give him space to work and see what he can do. How about giving him more weapons? That would help a lot. Looking at this Vikings team in 2012, though, Adrian Peterson, what more can we say? We know what he was able to do. We know the numbers that he posted and how close he came to breaking the all-time rushing single-season record. And so we're not going to spend a lot of time on Adrian Peterson. He is, without a doubt, the best back in the National Football League. I don't want to hear any comparisons. I don't want to hear anyone else even being mentioned in the same breath with Adrian Peterson. He's the best back in the National Football League, hands down. So now that that's been talked about and addressed, the Vikings need receivers. Man, does Percy Harvin want to be around? Let's talk about that quickly and then move on. Does Percy Harvin want to be around? Does he want to be a Minnesota Viking moving forward? He's gotten into it with players. I don't know if him and Leslie Frazier are always seeing eye to eye. He wanted out before the season started. You don't have enough talent to allow guys like Percy Harvin to walk. There's just not enough talent on your roster. So what is it going to take to convince him that this is where he needs to be? Because you don't have enough talent out wide. You don't have enough talent on this team, period, for Percy Harvin to even be considering leaving. For you to even be thinking that he's a guy that you can trade and get enough value back. So I just don't know. If he doesn't want to be there, then don't force him to be somewhere that he doesn't want to be. Allow him to go. But if there's anything you can do to convince him that this is where he needs to be, then do it. Because you need all the talent that you can get. And Percy Harvin does so much for your football team. It's hard for me to see you replacing him with just one guy. You'll need multiple guys to come in and replace what he's able to do for you in the returns game, on offense, as a guy out of the backfield, as a pass catcher out wide. He does so many things for you. It'll be hard to replace him with just one guy. You'll have to replace him with multiple players. And so you just need to find a way to keep Percy Harvin in the fold. But I don't know if what's going on between Percy Harvin and the Minnesota Vikings is irreconcilable. I don't know about that. Is the damage irreparable? It could be. It might be. Let's hope it's not. Because I love watching Percy Harvin play as a Minnesota Viking. I think he brings a lot to that team. And I think the Vikings really need him. They could have used Percy Harvin down the stretch in the regular season. Even though they won all 4 of those games, they could have used Percy Harvin in the postseason. They could have used Percy Harvin down the stretch. This team can use Percy Harvin moving forward. You look at this defense, and they got it done getting to the quarterback. They had 44 sacks on the season. More than enough, more than adequate for you to perform at a high enough level to win football games. The Vikings scored over 24 points per game in the season. They gave up a shade over 21 points per game. And so they got it done defensively. Again, when you got guys like Jared Allen, you have guys like Everson Griffin and Brian Robinson, you're going to get sacks. Everson Griffin, 8. Brian Robinson, 8.5. Jared Allen, 12. You're getting sacks. Those 3 right there are going to give you over 25 sacks per season. So you don't worry about getting sacks. What's going on in that back half of the defense, though? I love Harrison Smith. And he's a playmaker. 3 interceptions, 2 of them going back to the house. He's a guy that you can count on moving forward as a playmaker in your secondary. I like Harrison Smith a lot. But what else is going on in that secondary? How long is Antoine Winfield going to be able to hold up at the corner position? You got some young corners, A.J. Jefferson, Chris Cook, but you need more corners. You need more stuff in that secondary. Jamaica Sanford, is he good enough at the safety position? I don't know. I have my questions and my doubts. We'll see. But I think you need more youth at that linebacker position as well. You need more speed, more athleticism, more playmakers. I like Chad Greenway. He's okay. But you don't have a lot of speed. You don't have a lot of flash at the linebacker position. I think you need more of it. So if you're the Vikings, I think that you need to improve upon your roster in 2013. I think the roster was solid. It wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination. but it was solid. It was good enough for you to do what you needed to do to win 10 games and get to the postseason. But moving forward, this team needs to improve at linebacker, at cornerback, most of all, at receiver. You need about 3 receivers. Literally, you need about 3 receivers. I like Jarius Wright. I think that that's someone that you can hang on to and see what he can turn into. I think he's someone that you could build around out there. If you can keep Percy Harvin in the fold, that would be great. You'd have 2 to start with. But the rest of that group, you can go ahead and just shed yourself of them. Devin Aromashodu, I thought he'd be better than what he was. He's never going to be what I thought he was going to be. You can cut ties with him. You got Michael Jenkins. He's solid. You can cut ties with him, though. You need to take Jarius Wright, Percy Harvin, and start over. Just take those 2 and move on. And just start building your wide receiving corps from the ground up. Because, and I apologize, Jerome Simpson is in that mix too. When he's healthy, when he's not dealing with some kind of issue off the field, he's solid. So you take those 3, and then you just need to start building more depth on that wide receiving corps because you just don't have a lot of it. And Christian Ponder doesn't have a lot of weapons to throw the football to. I think he needs to throw the ball to his tight end a lot more. Again, another Notre Dame product for this Minnesota Vikings team that is extremely talented. You need to be throwing the football a lot more to Kyle Rudolph. I think Kyle Rudolph is one of the most gifted and talented tight ends in all of the National Football League. And he needs to be featured a lot more in this offense. When you get more talent out wide, I think he'll be allowed to shine even more because then you can't focus so much on Kyle Rudolph. The Vikings have to get more talent for Christian Ponder. That'll take that excuse out of the equation. Because right now, if you're an apologist for Christian Ponder, you need not mention anything other than he doesn't have enough weapons to really get people off of his back. People like myself. He doesn't have talent, and I know that. And I can see that, and I can accept the fact that he needs more talent around him. So, if you're the Vikings, that 23rd pick in the draft needs to be a receiver. In free agency, you need to be targeting a receiver. If you can get your hands on Greg Jennings, why not? Why not? You need to start trying to get playmakers on this football team. Both sides of the football, defense and offense. You could use a playmaking linebacker. You got a playmaking safety. You have a playmaking defensive end. You need a playmaker at that second wave, at the linebacker position. Right now, you're void of a playmaker at the linebacker position. You have a playmaker in the backfield in Adrian Peterson. If Percy Harvin sticks around, you have a playmaker out wide. You have a playmaker at tight end. But if Percy Harvin decides to leave, you need a playmaker at receiver. If Percy Harvin sticks around, you still need a playmaker at wide receiver. So in the free agent market, you need to be targeting cornerbacks, linebackers, and receivers. If you don't address it then you go and address it in the draft. Simple as that. If you are the Minnesota Vikings, you need to put as much talent as you can around Christian Ponder to help him develop and grow. And that'll help you take the next step. And that'll do it for the Minnesota Vikings. Here on the Lab follow-up for the Minnesota Vikings, I thank you for joining me. Come back tomorrow when we'll be talking about the 24th team to select in the NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts. So join me tomorrow when we'll be doing a Lab follow-up on 2 teams. We'll have a doubleheader in the Lab room on the Lab follow-up segment as we'll be talking about the Indianapolis Colts first, as they'll be selecting 24th in the draft in the 2013 NFL Draft. And we'll be doubling up and talking about the team to select 25th, the Seattle Seahawks. So come back tomorrow. Join me here on the Lab follow-up as we'll be talking Indianapolis Colts, followed by the Seattle Seahawks. See you then. Have a good one.
Minnesota Vikings.